Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in today to our conference proposal tutorial from ArizOTA. My name is Heidi Carpenter. I am an occupational therapist. I'm the current president of ArizOTA. And today we also have presenting, go ahead.
I'm Allie Delamontagne. I'm the current vice president of ArizOTA. And then we also have
I'm Holly Jones. I'm also an occupational therapist, and I am a one-year board member of ArizOTA.
So we hope that this presentation is a kind of starter how-to guide for submitting proposals to not only ArizOTA conference, but other conferences as well. This is by no means all-inclusive, but we do hope it gives you a start, and we do go over our ArizOTA specific guidelines toward the end here. So we are going to discuss, actually, this is part one of part two. So we'll just briefly touch on adult learning theory, but our part two later this summer is going to include much more in-depth dive into this. So today we're really going to focus on those learning objectives, abstract writing, references for our conference proposals, and we're going to kind of ground this in Bloom's taxonomy and the APA 7th edition. And so I always love a good quote. So this is not attributed to any one person, but I really feel like when we're presenting at conferences as clinicians, we have a love of lifelong learning often, and we want to share that with each other. I know for me, even though I still get anxious, I still get nervous, I really find that working with others to keep learning fills my cup. And so it's an activity I really love doing. And so as we've been wanting to do a presentation like this for a while, and Holly came to us and said, hey, I really want to do this NeuroTrack at conference this year. I'm having community practitioners ask me questions about writing objectives, about making sure everything is in line with APA. And so I want to assure you that we're not looking for perfection. I learn every single time I submit a proposal, and not everything is accepted to what I submit. And so we'll also hear from our other practitioners about maybe some of their experiences too. But to first dive in, we want to think about why would we submit a proposal? So when we think about teaching what we've learned in the field, a lot of times it is about professional growth. It's about our ability to now share with others what we have learned. And one way I like to think about it is when I am working with one client, that is that one-on-one time. But if I go and teach something that I've learned that's really helped me and the clients I serve to 10 other clinicians, that's 10 other people who then might teach it to 10 other clients. And so the knowledge continues to grow and get passed on. And so the impact can really be quite substantial. Also, networking, whether it's a virtual conference or an in-person conference, there's an energy about that. There's an energy about coming together with other professionals and contributing to the field. And yes, while spending a lot of time, if you're an introvert like me, around other people or even on Zoom all day can be kind of exhausting, it's also really uplifting and cup filling as well. So there are, common anxieties about proposals. Of course, we do want to be as accurate as possible, and we're going to work through some strategies on how to do that. So when we think about kind of creating a topic, it can seem really overwhelming often. And so when I think about what I want to teach somebody, I listened to this presentation one time that really stuck with me. The instructor said, think about questions that you want to be able to answer for your learners. And so a really good way to do this is through writing clear objectives. Clear objectives define the purpose and goals of your presentation. And they are objective, measurable behaviors that your learner is going to be able to do by the end of the presentation. So if we have general themes and we have a general place to start with what we want to be in our presentation, we can then look at how we're going to use learning activities to help our learners grasp those concepts. So the levels of Bloom's taxonomy, and we probably got this all the time in school, are remember, understand, apply, analyze, evaluate, and create. So here is a nice visual for us visual learners on how these objectives kind of scaffold on each other. So we might think about a presentation we went to recently. Hopefully it was high quality. So the instructor probably started with remember and understand concepts. These are often defined by asking learners to remember, describe, discuss, explain concepts, because when learners can do that, then they can move on to applying those concepts. So in occupational therapy, for example, we usually see remember and understand objectives applied in case study activities or that type of thing. And then the evaluate and create levels usually come in when we're asking our learners to, say, create a treatment plan or create an evaluation based on a case study. I would also like to point out from a presentation preparation standpoint, here is an example of how on that Bloom's taxonomy pyramid, how the Creative Commons licensing is listed. So in there's a little bit of flexibility. I would love to hear from either Ali or Holly if there are some other perspectives on this. So this image I got from Google Images, like from the actual Google Slides application. So there wasn't a website to say retrieved from, because that is how APA asks for web images to be cited in a slide. So with this one, it came straight from the application in the image search. So that Creative Commons by underneath it simply requires that the creator of the image be cited, which it is there with Vanderbilt University being cited for the Creative Commons license. Ali or Holly, do you have anything else to say about anything we've covered so far?
Well, just to touch a little bit on the objectives, I guess one way that helped clarify to me kind of creating objectives is it's not much different than how we create goals for our patients. You're just creating goals now for your learners. You're going to create these goals using the verbs from Bloom's taxonomy. So it's kind of that same format. You're just going to create it into what you're presenting on and what you want your learners to learn from your presentation. So that kind of really helped me understand what an objective actually was.
So these are tips for, this is actually examples for each level, and you'll see how each of these are objective and measurable. You could see your learner, you could ask them to do a teach back, and they would be able to show you any of these objectives. So these are kind of tips you can ask yourself when you're creating your objective. Could I see this learner demonstrating this to me? That is something I often ask myself. Anything else to add on this?
I don't think so. I think we're
cool. So we'll go forward with writing an abstract. So the purpose of an abstract is to summarize those main points of your presentation. It's also kind of that short description to draw your attendee into your presentation. So yes, at ArizOTA, we only have a couple of choices or maybe one choice to attend at any given time, but at larger conferences, people are reading the schedule, and how we word our abstracts can really pull people in to if they want to come view our presentation. So with writing an abstract, we are generally, if it's more research-based, going to have the introduction, purpose, methods, results, and conclusion. But if it's more of a teaching or practice-based abstract, we would more be talking about what we're going to present on and what the learner is going to get out of the session. So there are a few different ways, and I guess right now is as good a time as any to say that generative AI has kind of come onto the main stage here. And so Chat GPT, other services that do generative text AI can honestly be helpful in helping to craft ideas. However, we're still using our, professional judgment with what we include and how we cite that. And there are a variety of different recommendations for how generative AI should be cited, and it's kind of changing all the time too. So I don't want to provide one specific way and then have the recommendation change. So I would say just follow the professional organizations and, the ethical discussions around how we're citing any AI. So when we are writing our abstract, there is typically a word count. So it's either a word count or a character count. So sometimes you'll see an abstract or an abstract synopsis, which is then even shorter than the abstract. So keep an eye on the characters or the word counts, because I'll just tell you, ArizOTA is not this picky, but other submissions might actually just cut you off, or if they see an abstract come in that is too long, they won't even continue to review it and they'll kick it out because the reviewers are considering that instruction following to be part of the criteria that the person is really kind of paying attention and following the instructions. So we do want to avoid more of that complex language and jargon. Yes, we are kind of picking our audience. So if it is an occupational therapy conference, we could be using more specific occupational therapy language. However, if we are presenting at more of an interprofessional conference or at a conference of mixed learners where we might have healthcare professionals, but then also consumers, we really want to think about making our language more friendly for how maybe we might talk with our clients about our services. And so we really want to be answering the why, like why is what we're presenting important? What are the benefits? What's the relevance to this topic? Anything to say on abstracts?
I think something to add is a good way to know if you're being comprehensive in what you're trying to portray to the audience, especially because there is such a limited word count, is think of it like an elevator pitch. So if I had, 1 or 2 minutes just to explain what my potential presentation is going to be about, could I do that? And so practicing on peers, or even it's great to practice with like family members who maybe don't have as much knowledge about our profession. So somebody who is coming in, especially if it is a more introductory type presentation, that may be a good avenue to just see if, am I being clear in my display of the actual content?
That is a great point. Holly, anything to add?
Nothing on that one.
Okay. And I will tell you, abstracts, I continue to, I don't like writing abstracts. I think it is difficult for me. I keep doing it, hopefully keep getting better at it. But I really do appreciate just kind of more of that longer narrative format to explain my thoughts. So I will tell you, it does get a little bit easier, but at the same time, your audience might change. Who you're writing the abstract for might change. So just really following the guidelines and doing your best on that, I think is kind of the best wisdom I can guide for writing abstracts, because I do think it is really tricky when you've spent so much time doing all this work and then you have to distill your work down, like Ali said, to that short elevator pitch. But continuing to talk about your content and your topic does really help get it down. So moving on to citing references. So, in occupational therapy, we are going to follow APA. We're in the 7th edition right now. Why is this important? Well, we definitely want to give credit where credit is due for all of our hardworking colleagues out there, and we want to be professional. We also want to avoid plagiarism. So this even includes self-plagiarism. So if we are using content from presentations that we've used in the past, that's totally fine, but we're going to cite that. And we are just going to acknowledge that it's something that's taken from an earlier presentation or an earlier work or a paper that we've written. So this is the basic, actually it's missing the, see, this is how tricky APA is. This is even missing the the italices. So this is your general journal article format for APA. But you would have italices in there for the title of the periodical and the volume number. So see, even in this presentation, there are things to point out. So
let's go to just to show, I think at the very end. Oh, it's not even on here either.
I know. Oh,
actually, just in case you guys were wondering, what sometimes happens is you can have it perfectly on your Word document, and then when you put it and you upload it into a PowerPoint presentation, it changes. So I have actually learned that quite a bit from being in a post-professional program, but I have to make sure that I go back and fix. It might have been perfect in the Word document, but as soon as I copy and paste it into my presentation, it takes all the italicized out of it. So I've had to many times go back through and refix it, even when it was how it should be in a different document. So it's a good teaching point right there.
Yes, such a good point. Okay, so there are tools for APA formatting. So we are going to look to that actual manual as our gold standard. I don't believe there's an ebook of it. There are Purdue OWL and APA style websites. There are also reference type tools like Zotero, EndNote. Any of the third party, not the APA 7th edition manual, as much as they update them, it is always good to check them manually. Like Holly just pointed out too, even if you did your presentation, oftentimes I will use a Word doc or a Google Doc and then transfer it over to slides. I am constantly having to check that the formatting carried over. And as you see, it doesn't always happen. The same happens if maybe you're working in a cloud-based document and you download it to a file on your computer as a Word document, it can change, or a PowerPoint, it can change the formatting as well. So that is a good kind of check on your list to just make sure the final steps are that you're formatting. Now, sometimes I will say most of the conference proposal presentation platforms do require an online submission. And so when you're inputting references into a text box, like ArizOTA, we use JotForm. I don't believe that the formatting carries over for references. And I will tell you, generally, if you are using those online submission tools, the reviewers are also understanding that the submission platform is not going to reflect how the APA manual would want you to be so specific about your italicization. So you don't really have to worry too much on that. But then when it is in your slides, if it is on any of your materials that you're submitting, you do want those to be, or giving to your participants in a PDF or something like that. That's where you really want to do your best to have your accurate APA formatting. So now we're going to move into the ArizOTA specific proposal submission guidelines. And these were developed, these were developed by a group of peers. And so they have been refined over the years to hopefully stay as accurate and fair as possible.
All right, thank you, Heidi. So, some of this might be a little redundant since we did go over some of kind of the basic tenets. So now it's just applying it to what you'll see on the call for papers proposal. And you can find this on the ArizOTA website. So you can go in, click the call for papers. And again, we do use Jotform, as Heidi mentioned. So in the proposal submission, there will be a place to put your title. And, as we're reviewing these pieces of your presentation proposal, we're looking for the title is how accurately does the title represent the presentation? So, even though your presentation may be on a certain topic, you want to make sure that your title is really capturing kind of the essence of that presentation. And that really helps for the learner or people, especially at like fall conference where we have multiple tracks available and people are choosing which track to go to, that they really can kind of get a quick idea of, oh, this is what's included in this presentation. So again, it's not looking at like lengthy presentation titles, just what are you talking about in the presentation, and just kind of a quick glance to give the potential learner just some information. We talked about learning outcomes, so making sure your outcomes are achievable based on proposed presentation type and duration. So outcomes are written to be observable and verified. So Holly made a good point that, in practice, when we're writing our goals, we're looking at making our goals observable, measurable for our clients. And then outcomes are consistent with the proposal. So, that what you're looking at, the outcomes of your study being, or the presentation being, are consistent with what you are going to be talking about in your proposal. So using language from Bloom's taxonomy, if you're providing, a presentation where you're going through a PowerPoint slide in 1 hour, if you're doing a 1 hour presentation, your learner isn't going to be able to apply that information necessarily to practice or be in those higher levels of critical thinking from that presentation. So just like we grade, working with our clients, we want to grade to when somebody is being introduced to a new topic in practice, what level are we trying to get them to be able to apply that information outside of the presentation. All right, so then when we're looking at the abstract, so we talked about this in depth, and I think, something to be mindful of, just to drive this, this idea home, is that it is a limited word count. So we have a 200 word count, which, you utilize those words pretty quickly when you are writing an abstract for your presentation. So, really making sure that you have the key points in there. And this is so that the reviewer can really understand what is being, discussed in this presentation and how does it fit with maybe the potential track that it's going to be a part of, or where does it fit in line with some of the other submissions, and just essentially what is the essence of the presentation. Does the abstract adequately address the impact of the topic? So does, if you're looking at a particular topic, does the abstract really address kind of the key points of that topic? How well does the presentation appear to be highly engaging and interactive with practical components? So not every presentation needs to have a lot of application to it. Some presentations really lend itself to more of that receiving of information, but really thinking about, again, how we work with our clients in practice. What is the best way to educate our clients? Do we have some kind of a practical application component, or is it, more advantageous to do more of a straight lecture in this type of presentation? So kind of making that clear of what you're going to be conducting in your presentation in your abstract. How well does the abstract present a compelling problem or topic pertinent to the field or discipline? When we're looking at occupational therapy practice, practitioners, us practitioners, we're at the forefront of, here are the problems that we're seeing in practice and how are we addressing those problems? And so, kind of, looking full circle at how is this addressing the need for this information to be out there in occupational therapy practice. And then how well does the abstract describe the potential to lead the field in new directions or a deeper understanding of an issue? So kind of what is the why for this presentation, and what is the next, what is it going to provide for the learners of the topic? Next, it'll ask for level of presentation. And when we're talking about the level of presentation, there's not a better or worse when it comes to introduction, intermediate, or advanced. It's really giving your learners an idea of how much background knowledge do they have to have on a topic when they're being in a presentation. So for example, if I was going, majority of my career have worked in adult practice. If I was going to a presentation on a particular intervention in pediatric practice, that is not something that I would be as familiar with. So I may want to go to a more introductory session on that topic, whereas somebody who is working in pediatrics, would have more experience with that. So it really helps your learners to engage in what is the, most pertinent topics for me to be a part of, and is this something that is going to be, kind of within the realm of my experience. And it doesn't mean that, again, it's not better or worse based on what the level of presentation is. It's, how, when your learners are leaving this presentation, do they, or when they're entering the presentation, do they need to come with a certain level of previous knowledge to kind of gain something from the experience? In terms of the biography, so these, we do like to use the biographies to market for the sessions and to kind of highlight the speakers. So, it's important to have just kind of what are the qualifications that you have from practice to present on this topic? If you're presenting on vestibular rehab, do you have any, have you gone to any courses on vestibular rehab that could, support your presentation in this, or, your area of practice, et cetera. And then in terms of references, looking at how well do those references reflect, being a piece of the presentation. So, looking at more peer-reviewed studies, if you are an AOTA member, you have access to AJOT with your membership. And sometimes if you work for a big organization, you can have access to PubMed and some of the other journals. So, looking at what references are you using and what kind of is the quality of those references. Having the majority of your references be published within the last 5 years, and kind of keeping in mind what is the topic that you're presenting on, and does that lend itself to more seminal research, or is it more applicable to have newer research? So if you're, doing a presentation on something in the realm of technology is always changing, right? So it would be more advantageous to have significantly more recent studies. Those are probably gonna, not always, but it's more likely to lend itself to helping you support your presentation. Whereas if we're talking about, if you're doing a presentation on kind of a theory in occupational therapy, you're gonna wanna cite more of those seminal researchers. So, it doesn't mean that you can't cite websites, you can't cite more gray literature, but it is beneficial to, have some really quality citations in your presentation. And then, when we're looking at grammar, flow, APA 7th edition is the newest edition for APA. I don't know if you can see this in my video, or in my camera, but I actually have it right here on my desk. So that is the newest APA manual. And, this will be addressed more in our second piece, but we'll actually talk about what to put in your, presentation in terms of, how much wording to put on a slide or things like that. But in terms of the proposal, it doesn't need to be wordy and, lengthy. It's really looking at what are you, what is the point you're trying to get across in your presentation? What is your potential presentation going to be about? And just, is that clear and concise for the reviewers to get a really good grasp of your presentation? And then our next steps, which will be coming later this summer, we'll talk more just about how adults learn. I think that's really important to understand, how to go about designing your presentation and then preparing for the day of presentation, especially if you're new to ArizOTA or if you haven't attended a conference in a while. You know, we can help you with some tips and tricks in being successful, and keeping in mind that all of us therapists, you know, whether you've been working in the field for 2 years or 25 years, we have such vast, you know, differences in our experiences, and all have knowledge to bring to the table. I worked with a colleague who said that therapists have just like drawers and, you know, banks in our like databases of great data and information for presentation. So don't be hesitant to share. And then I'll pass it off to Holly before we take questions.
I think that's the other thing that we wanted to do this is we want to be a resource and to help. You know, I did my first presentation for ArizOTA in the spring. So I've been through the process. I was definitely very intimidated by the call for papers. I didn't really know where to start. I didn't know what kind of topic I wanted to talk on, but I knew I really was interested in doing a presentation. I wanted to be able to share some of my knowledge with others. It was a great experience, but I kind of wanted to be a help with bridging the gap with you're interested in presenting, but you're not sure where to start. So we want to be a resource. We want to be able to help if you're struggling finding a topic, or you're not sure if the if your presentation is cited correctly. You know, I'm more than happy. Just reach out. We can talk about topics. We can talk about objectives. We can go through your presentation. I would just love to see more participation and energy for presenting, especially if it's something you're really interested in doing, because it just makes the OT profession so much better when we share our knowledge with each other.
Great. And so I'll go ahead and stop screen sharing before we take questions. But again, I know Heidi mentioned this, but strive for good, not perfect. So, you know, sometimes waiting till the right moment, there is no perfect moment. And there is not always going to be a perfect presentation, but I guarantee you that if you get out there and, you know, work towards giving a presentation, that people will learn something from you. And, you know, we have the ability to, you know, Holly would be great to kind of help formulate the presentation. And, you know, conferences are just a great way for us to share our knowledge, and all of us have great tools in our toolbox that we can share with each other to propel this profession forward. And then if you don't follow us on any of the social accounts, please do so. And I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing, and then we'll go ahead and take questions.